Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DEO Growth Secrets podcast. I'm your fearless host, Emmett Scott, and today I have Vivek Kinra, CEO of Verrific, on here today. And that's a mouthful, but an awesome mouthful. I'm really excited to dig in because I'll just jump right into it, Vivek. We're all struggling with this increase in labor cost. I mean, we're trying to hit a 20% margin. And at DEO, we have 270 groups, entrepreneurs, doing collectively $3 billion. So we kind of know what's going on in the marketplace. And I can tell you that the pre-COVID versus post-COVID labor market world is super intense in trying to figure out how do I get back to that benchmark of 20% profitability at my practice level. And of course, just to clarify for everyone, that's 20% profitability if you were paying yourself as an associate, if you're a single doctor owner or across your platform. And one of the biggest issues is around labor cost. Another big issue is around collections, just generally, right? And the collections process. And you've been in this for a while. Like you've kind of been ahead of your time solving these problems. Of course, all of us have been doing them very manually, but I'd love to just tell our listeners a little bit of your background just so they understand how long you've been working on this, because you had a company even before Verific that was around that you ended up selling to Binco. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So by degree and everything, I'm a computer engineer. I spent my life writing software. And, my wife is a dentist, started a dental practice. And I remember my last corporate position, I was a VP of mobile application development. I was just super bored. But when you open a dental office, it's like your own business, right? And
Yeah.
I just found myself in these corporate rooms, kind of under the table, slacking the employees, and my heart and my mind was all at the dental office, right? So I ended up taking a 3 month sabbatical. I remember I actually attended one of the midwinter courses, got super fired up, sent my wife a text message saying, "Hey, I think I'm gonna quit my job and let's just make this practice." And she was like, very, very nervous because at that point of time, it was just a startup, wasn't doing that well. And here I am talking about quitting my job while my wife was pregnant, but it felt right. So I kind of just you know, went right into it, took a 3 month sabbatical and just never went back. And as I was just kind of running the practice, you just see so many issues. And this is back in like 2017, where the Facebook groups and the conversations around running it as a pure business weren't there, right? Like
Yeah.
it was starting, right? So I just went head first and then saw plenty and plenty of issues with insurance. And one of the first things I did was just restructure some of the insurance contracts for us because we were getting paid from insurances so poorly. And it was very
Mhm.
different. Insurance A pays us, I remember, $664 for a crown, and insurance B pays us $1,100 for a crown, etc. And then offices around us that were just friends of ours that were getting all these varied rates. So kind of went down that rabbit hole and realized that there's a whole big industry and there's mechanism to negotiate and restructure your contracts. Did that and made a very, very big dent in our office. In fact, when I used to run PPO Profits in my webinars, I used to show, March of 2016 or 2017 versus March of 2018 with the same, provider mix. And it was just, life changing for us. And so eventually started a company in October of 2018 called PPO Profits. And I thought at that time, I'm just going to be like, continue to run the practice, but, have like a side business and make some extra money. And before I knew it, it just from day one, just massive demand. And, when the company was eventually acquired in October of 2023, about 20 days shy as a 20 days shy of 5 years, it had 70 people working in the company full time. And, we had worked with about 2,700 dentists, went into billing, wrote us, had some software for in-office memberships. And I was just totally like, overwhelmed with the demand. And there was not a single day from the day that I started the company to the time when the company was acquired that we weren't behind the eight ball when it comes to demand. We just carried like a 4 month wait list for the most part. During that as well,
And can I just say something that's
yeah.
super validating, by the way, for, a lot of our members at DEO being in industry is the only industry they've ever been in. And one of the things I try to help them understand is like, this is complex, right? Like, for those of us who've been in lots of different industries, when we come into this, we realize how many different moving parts there truly are in healthcare, and especially a retail healthcare environment, and how many systems and tools are not built to do this. So, if you're a dentist owner out there and you're like, man, this feels really hard, one, I'd say get in with DEO because you'll be with other entrepreneurs who are solving these problems. But number two, give yourself a little bit of grace because this is one of the more difficult entrepreneurship journeys. Very worth it, great return, but there is a lot of pieces that need individuals like you, Vivek, who are, we call you our innovation partners, because as dental practices and dental groups, we can't solve for all these different pieces, right? And so I love that you're digging deep. It sounds like on the insurance negotiations where you started. And then now tell me where you've gone with Verrific, because it sounds like you're now solving for the collections piece starting at the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. And this started about 2, 3 years ago as well. I was, for about 2 years running Verific and PPO profits at the same time, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to sell PPO profits as well. Because, this, it's just really, really difficult to run two fast growing companies at the same time. I mean, I'm not Elon Musk, right? Like, so it just was somewhat stressful, right? And so with Verific, it was the second problem, which is, and it still exists, which is insurance verifications, right?
Right.
And in this modern world where dental offices still have to make phone calls, stay on hold, get some other person on the line and manually enter the information, it's kind of like if you tell anybody, from the Silicon Valley that this problem exists in dentistry today, they're going to be like, that's just not possible. But that's where we are. And so about 3 years ago, in about late 2021, or sorry, was it 2022? Actually 21, late 2021, I just had this idea about, and I don't think I was the only person who had this idea. Maybe multiple people had it. We just executed it, which is that every single office right now is calling on these plans and putting this information in their practice management software, whether it's Open Dental, Dentrix, etc. Right? Why isn't there like a national master database? So we decided that we could just crowdsource this information. And then because the plan information remains constant throughout the year, and all the employees of that particular plan have the same exact benefits, right? And so if you could just crowdsource or create a master database, it would be super beneficial because everyone doesn't have to keep making the same phone calls over and over again. So back in
Mm.
2021, raised some money to create this platform, which is what we released out of beta last year, right? And then it's somewhat magical where, and what this software does, it's a combination of multiple things, but it's what I would call its magic things that it does are it has the ability to standardize the data, and most importantly, it has the ability to create this like massive crowdsourced database. And as of last year, late last year, we had about 107,000 unique plans in the system. But I know I'm getting too technically
No, no,
detailed in
no.
there.
It's
All right,
it's really awesome. Can I just back up because I
sure.
think for those who aren't software engineers, and maybe even Silicon Valley, the part that people don't understand is there's no standard language and
Right,
there's no association that is forcing standardization amongst the insurance companies. And so I've watched many companies go down this path and not be able to solve it. It's really interesting how you are solving it because what they found was had there been like a standard language and a standard set of data and an API that each insurance company needed to create, then this probably would have been solved a long time ago.
right,
But because the insurance companies don't see this as a core issue for them, you know, and the inefficiency might even benefit them slightly. They
right,
wouldn't say that, but we would.
right,
Um, then they've never sat down and said, hey, let's all structure our data the same way. Let's provide APIs for these software companies, and let's just pump this information in directly so that people don't have to call us. We don't have to have a call center, et cetera. Maybe they just can't get along. I don't know. But they've all decided that they're going to do it a different way. And so it's been almost impossible for anyone to solve it. What you're saying is, yeah, but now in today's world, you could crowdsource the information even if you don't have a direct pipe in, Right.
Right. For the plan information, that is correct. For the
Yeah.
patient information, which the way I describe it is people call it eligibility, but it's more than that. It's if the patient is active or not, how much insurance and deductible is remaining for that patient, and history, right?
Yes.
Those three things, obviously, we can't crowdsource it because it changes all the time. It's for different patients. So we still rely on the insurance carriers to provide that. But the big chunk of the plan information is what we've been able to crowdsource. And you're absolutely right. And I think for anybody that is listening, right? I have gotten so deep into the weeds of some of this where it's, some of the big clearinghouse companies, like I meet with them on a weekly basis to give them information about some of this stuff. Um, and and
Interesting.
and I may be overstating this, I could be totally, but as an entrepreneur, I'm also not like, more on the business side per se. I'm like really sleeves rolled up and deep into the weeds, understanding the problem at a very, very minute level. I enjoy that. And I'm not sure if, how many people there are in this country who understand at such a nuanced level. Because when I look at the data structure, when I look at what's coming out, it's far more complex than even people recognize. It's
Uh-huh.
so weirdly nuanced. Like I tell people a very good example, MetLife, one of the best portals out there, one of the best clearinghouse companies out there for us
Okay.
to put the data. But when I tell this to dental offices, sometimes people are like, that can't be, which is that MetLife, even on their portal, if you go to meddental.com portal, will provide you history for the patient, like you can look at their dates of service, but it does not provide you history for SRPs, for sealants, for fillings, for crowns. That information, if you want to know if the patient had an SRP done, a deep cleaning, you have no other option but to make a phone call. There is
Mm.
no other option, right? You
Mm.
can't RPA it, which is like scraping the websites because it doesn't exist. You can go to the portals, the clearinghouse isn't providing it. So it's at that level. And if you can think about how these kind of things manifest themselves, you would have a patient come to a dental office. The front office goes to meddental.com and sees, oh, this patient 6 months ago had a comp exam done, a full mouth x-ray done, and that's it. Did not get an SRP done. And the doctor says, oh, you know what? I think you need a SRP, gets the SRP, gets declined,
Denied.
right? Because
Right.
that date an SRP was also done, but MetLife doesn't tell you that electronically. And it's just
Yeah, this
so
is
mental.
really fascinating. Okay, there's a couple things here. Number one, you said scraping the website. For those who don't know, one of the ways that you can create software that gets data is you can create, let's call it a bot that goes in, logs in as you, and then it looks at all the website, grabs all the information, then provides that as a database. But if the information's not there, it can't scrape that, right? So if it's somehow hidden or just frankly isn't available, even if it's kind of, you know, 10 clicks down, the bot can still find it. But if it's just not there, then that's fascinating. And then you hit on the most important part. So to me, where like the ROI of all this comes in. When I'm working with someone or one of our 15 coaches is working with an individual and they're helping them get their collection rate higher, right? So they think their collections rate great. Then we have them run a few reports and they're like, never mind, I need some help. One of the things you start to realize is part of the denial started all the way back on verification, right? So they're worried about their billing team, which probably is good, and what they need to be doing. But frankly, in the example you just gave, there's nothing a billing team can do to get that approved. There's no appeal process for something that's going to get denied for frequency or other things like this. So the verification is the groundwork for one, more efficiency in the practice, because not only did I not collect this, but it means the doctor did the work. They spent time on those things. There was a conversation with the patient. The patient thought that, you know, they were getting value or they didn't need to pay for it, all those things. Are you going to go back to the patient, say, never mind, this, you know, you now have to pay for something I told you you weren't, that was included. Like there's so much inefficiency that happens through bad verification. You know, it's not just like a kind of nice to have. So, all right. So, one question I do have is, so why do you say MetLife's one of the best? Is like, even as bad as that is, that's still one of the best.
That's right. That I tell people that when you're trying to get this data electronically,
Yeah.
across the, 230 main pairs, this smattering of smaller ones too, but 230 main pairs, you're going to get 0 to 70% of the information, right? And
Mm,
0% is like a Sun Life that doesn't have a clearinghouse connection.
interesting.
They just added that right now, but that's the example I used to give. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois. If you use the clearinghouse, which is called EDI, is the data that they have, which is like a very poor standard, and there's no like we discussed, there's no law that says how much data and what structure do you have to provide, right?
Mm,
So the only thing that Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois, which is a conglomerate, a part of a conglomerate called DNOA, Dental Networks of America, includes Texas, New Mexico, etc. Only thing it provides is if the patient is active or not. That's it.
mm.
It does not tell you how much insurance is remaining. It has zero plan data, so you don't know what the annual maximum is, right? The only thing you get is if the patient is active or not. So that to me
Okay,
is
what
the
about Delta? Everybody's going to want to know where's Delta
yeah.
fall in the
And,
spectrum?
and Delta is the perfect example of why nobody has moved on from this system. Okay, because I have a very, very in-depth knowledge about Delta for a variety of reasons, because different Deltas have a lot of interest in this space, in this insure tech space. Like they want to invest in it and all that stuff, right?
Okay.
So there are 39 different Delta dentals, right? So when we
Because
said
there's state insurance laws and they have to create it based on the insurance laws of those states, right? Yeah.
right. Right. So, and Delta Dental is an association similar to Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is a license. So you have different insurance companies that buy that license and they operate in that state. Delta Dental is
It's
also an
like a
association.
franchise. Yeah.
Kinda. Yeah, exactly. Right. Which means Delta Dental of Illinois is a totally different company from Delta Dental of Indiana. And they
Mm,
have nothing in common between each other. There's zero.
interest.
Except,
Really?
yeah, except what they have agreed on across them is to utilize this standard called EDI, which is basically the protocol for healthcare providers that came out in the 80s or 90s that provide stuff like claim information, ERA, eligibility and benefits. And sometimes, people that are a little deeper into this technically will say something like 270, 271 data. That's basically this EDI protocol. Protocol 270 is the request. Protocol 271 is the response back, right? That some of these companies adhere to. The problem is that within those 39 Delta Dentals, they communicate back and forth via EDI. What that means is that's the reason why you don't always just have to go to Delta Dental of California to fetch the information. You could go to a different Delta Dental and still get that information. You could go to Delta Dental Toolkits, INS, etc.
It
But
sounds good. That sounds positive so far. Yeah.
that sounds somewhat positive, but there's breaks in the process. Like one very, very weird break I'll give you. This is where things start to fall apart, which is that if we take a look at a patient that has Delta Dental of New Mexico, that patient may have a plan with a group number, which is really the big identifier of the plan, that may say something like 23456 dash 00001. Okay. And that 00001 is a subgroup and it's very important. If you go to Delta Dental of New Mexico and you look at the group, it'll say that. But if you go to DDIC or Delta Dental Toolkits, the dash 00001 will be wiped out. So it'll just say 23456, which is actually a totally different group number because
Mm,
that particular group will have multiple. So if you think about like how do you standardize the data for a dental office, what a dental office can make the mistake. So the dental office gets a patient, goes to the dental toolkits, puts in the patient and says, oh, this group number is 23456, right? Puts it into the practice management software. You have a second patient that's coming in. Also, the group number starts with 23456. And they're like, oh, I don't need to do any breakdown of benefits here because I already have it in my system. I'll just select it. But it
mm.
was a totally different plan, right?
That dash and extension numbers. You know what this makes me realize too is just each practice, let's say your buddy is like, "Oh, I don't have any problems with this." And then somebody else, well, your insurance mix could determine how hard your verification process is, right?
Oh,
So,
100%.
yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah,
if you're like, I think you said, was it Sun Life or one of these others, if you had for some reason you were in a small region that was your primary, then your verification's 10 times harder than the guy
right.
who's got a different mix. And so understanding the complexity of your verification for each insurance could help you understand what kind of resources you need for your front desk or for a technology like this, right? So,
100%. And we help with that when we're talking to the dental offices to, and this is exactly what I let people know when they say, okay, what do I need? I'm like, how successful the software is going to be is also dependent on your payer mix, insurance mix, right?
yeah,
Um, but coming back to this problem, if you now think about what should happen is an API level where you can just, there's a standardization of data and there's an API. Well, right now, 39 different Delta Dentals have to coordinate this process to achieve it at the same time because currently they communicate via EDI. So if they need to create a totally different separation, you have 39 different companies with each of their own independent goals, their
mm,
CEOs, their boards, their finances, etc., that have to come together to say, yes, we need to achieve this. And from a business level, there's no incentive either, right? Like there's no
right,
CEO of Delta Dental that's saying, well, we are going to make more money by approving more claims by providing more data. I mean, right? Like,
right.
right?
Yeah, that's where there's actually a friction or a conflict of interest here. Is simplicity may drive down their labor cost as far as somebody having to do the verification, but it would increase the utilization. And so but nobody's sitting around actually trying to figure that out either. Yeah.
I think they might have honestly figured it out because right now, if you think about it, when we make a call to United Healthcare or MetLife or Dental, those calls go to Philippines, right? These centers are all
Mm.
there's a city called shoot, kind of blank like Makita or something like that. I'm blanking out, but that's where are these big buildings where all these data centers for some of these big insurances. I think from their perspective, the cost of a person that's more lower labor cost is actually lower than actually having to paying out these claims.
So the inefficiency at a lower outsourced labor cost is kind of the magic for them, even if it's painful for us,
I
right?
think so.
And
Now,
bad for the patient. Yeah.
there's a little of cynicism there, but I think
Sure.
that's probably what's driving it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but that does make it, and I think what should happen is like an act of Congress, right? And my end goal with all of this stuff is to be like this, right now Verific is not that huge and stuff like that, but it's this little company in my view that is doing all the right things because we have built out the standard. We have standardized the data. Like we can help these payers to say, hey, United Healthcare, this is the way, take our AI layer that takes whatever you send in. You don't have to rewrite the whole thing and we can convert it into this standard that all of you guys can use. And I hope that we get big enough traction where we are now the big boys in this space that have built the right solution for the industry where we go to the ADA and ADA is in Chicago, which is where I live, for me to say, hey, all the dentists use your ADA claim form today. The payers understand it, the dental offices understand it. I think it's time for the ADA eligibility and benefits form, right? And
Mhm.
here it is, should be your number one agenda item. We have already built it. Let's advocate it to get all the different payers on our system, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk through a case study. Okay. Because right now, I'm guessing that several of our listeners are forwarding this to their office manager, ops, or RCM team and like, okay, how can we use this to, increase efficiency for the team? And the office manager is listening to this and saying, okay, how would I actually implement this? What would it look like? So walk us through kind of what your best customers are doing and what kind of ROI they're getting by implementing Verific in their offices.
Yeah, so there are two aspects for Verrific, right? And people who know Verrific have also heard this term called Verismart, and I think it'll be a good opportunity for me to explain the distinctions, right? Verrific is the name of the company. And
Okay.
when we first started, we was a purely outsourced company, which means you outsource the verifications to us. We've got a big labor pool overseas as well, and we've got, centers in two different countries,
You've
and we
got
would
the Philippine friends sitting next to the insurance Philippine friends, and they just chat with each other.
you're actually not that far off because
So awesome.
the people that we hire used to be the guys and girls that used to provide the data for MetLife and United Healthcare on the
It's
other
awesome. So
side,
they know the
right?
questions to ask. They know they can say, no, 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 go here and get that information. Yeah, it's awesome.
Right. So we started that way. And then we basically said, all right, let's just build this AI system that can take the information from the clearinghouse, standardize it, gets all the patient data that we get. And for all the plan data, let's just manually feed it into a master database that we can utilize, right? And so this software that we built, which was in beta early last year, came out of beta late around middle of last year, is called VeriSmart. So we have now released a subscription-based VeriSmart software that a dental office can sign up for. And then it currently integrates with Open Dental, Dentrix, and EagleSoft. So it'll pull all your schedule for all the patients that have dental insurance, select any day you want, and you can verify everything. And it'll run its AI verification, which is first going to the clearinghouse, fetching it, standardizing it, going into our standard database, master database, and bringing that. And what is really cool about this is that as part of your onboarding through the Verismart, you actually design your breakdown form online. So you will say, I want to know about night guards. I want to know if it's covered only for bruxism or if it's only within X months of osseous surgery. I want to know about IV sedation, etc. So
But
you
kind of
basically,
within your standard of care procedure mix. So you're not trying to grab a bunch of information that's not going to be super helpful.
right.
You can say, hey, this is usually what I'm going to treatment plan. This is where I feel comfortable. This is our standard of care at our practices. You pull that information so it feels very customized around what you're going to treatment plan. It's awesome. And right now, the software is starting to what replace that outsourcing solution, or do you have both
Yes.
available?
Both available.
Okay.
And for until we probably hit critical mass, right? It will need to use both. And I think the software you'll have to use, regardless, because we still have to fetch the data from the clearinghouse that is the patient specific information, right? We can't get around that by storing that data, into our database. So at this point, what we saw last year is that it was almost somewhat discouraging for us from a business standpoint, which is our outsourced invoices. So from a workflow standpoint, the way it works is, you log into Verismart, you can run this verifications, across, and it basically then compares it of all the data we were able to get against your customized breakdown. And it'll give you a number, it'll say 6 missing fields, right? Like literally you can click on it and it'll tell you the 6 pieces of information that you wanted we could not figure out. Okay.
Okay. And do
And
I still, and then I'd have to call in and finish that off.
there's multiple, workflows. You can just import it as is because you don't need everything for all the patients, right?
Gotcha.
Right. And so you can just say, yeah, I'm not really doing a deep cleaning on this patient. Do I need to know, can I do all 4 quads of SRP on the same day? Or I don't even have the time to do all 4 quads of SRP on the same day. You couldn't find it. Let's not bother making a phone call for that.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
Or the second thing is the dental office can do it themselves. Like a lot of DSO groups and stuff like that have their centralized billing teams. So we just train those teams to say, you don't need to worry about anything else. Now you just need to collect these 6 things, put it in our Verismart system, because now you're helping all of Verismart populate those 6 fields for that particular plan, right?
Yeah.
Or the third option is, which is hit outsource, and for a fee, we will call on your behalf and do it for you, right? So all
Okay.
those 3 things work,
Which,
but
if I'm a smaller practice, I probably just want to outsource it to get the arbitrage on labor because, my office manager sitting on the phone is probably more expensive than just having you go solve that for me. And um, yeah, it's so really what I'm looking at if I'm a practice owner is I'm looking at the cost of labor for my team to be doing this, or we're not doing it. And so what is the cost of the collections percentage that I'm not getting because of this? What is the cost of the labor for me as a clinician or my associates that they're doing things that aren't getting paid on? And so if there's enough arbitrage there and difference, then it's super valuable. And what do you typically see? Like, give me a case study of somebody, single practice, multi practice. Give me a couple case studies that say, this, here's the investment they made, here's the return that they saw.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, my wife's dental practice is probably a perfect use case for some of this stuff as well. We're in a big metropolitan like Chicago, right? And so what we used to see is just very, very high cost of the people in the front desk. And legitimately out of it's a solo doctor office at that time. If you have two people at the front, one person's half a job is just insurance verifications. This is true
Mm.
numbers, right? So the hard cost for a practice would be about 2,500 for a small practice.
Right.
And that also is error prone, right? So our collections used to be like 94 something percent. And the way that truly, legitimately, the way that practices solve this problem is by not thinking about it, right? Like
Mm.
any office you go to and you take a look at their AR, you'll see a massive AR and you'll see plenty of claims that were denied. And it's just like not worth it, or because of so many other things that are happening, people just kind of leave it as is.
Right.
So we have over the last 2 years been running at over 99% collections, and I track my numbers really, really well to make sure what are right, what are, and we are,
So I mean, 5%, let's say 5% movement is the potential here, right? For most single practices, $1 million, that's $50,000. $2 million practice, that's $100,000 of additional income, plus just frankly the lack of wasted time, lack of treatment coordination and cost. So then you got the back end labor efficiency as well. And are they calling and all of these other pieces. And so, $2 million of revenue, there's probably a six-figure return, if not more. For,
and just from the like it, our average invoice per dental office right now is about 698 bucks, right? That includes, the outsourcing and all that stuff. So
I like investing 700 bucks and getting 10,000 back. I just feel like that's a good return, you know? So yeah,
yeah.
something like that would be amazing. Yeah.
And there are so many intangible benefits, right? Because not everything gets calculated in dollars, because you've got not as upset patients, and the time slot of just dealing with a problem of a claim not getting paid because something wasn't verified properly,
Yeah.
having to explain it, having to deal with it. Sometimes the doctor has to get involved. Like in any business, I look at all these like weird slop times. Like, the is it, are you spending the time improving and building the business, or are you dealing with problems,
I'm
right?
also seeing in today's market that tedious work drives turnover, right?
Very
So
much. Yeah.
people aren't interested in doing that. It's hard to hire someone that you want to be super friendly at your front desk and coordinate with patients and so forth, and then ask them to sit on a phone for 4 hours a day doing a bunch of minutia. And so then they're wondering, like, how do I find the right person? So then they find someone who will sit there and just do the minutia, but then the patient interaction's really poor, right? So you have to divide this out, and then you can increase the retention at your practice level too, which is huge. Right.
Yeah, and that's why I always tell people that, there's so many benefits. Just the not having to block your lines and having, someone on the phone doing it.
Yeah.
There's just take it, away. And there's still going to be issues because some of these are largely unsolvable problems, right? Like, and so, and that kind of goes
But
into,
I'm just trying to solve, if I can solve, yeah, 80, 90% of this lift. I mean, that's absolutely huge. And then how does it work like tactically? Um, so let's say I'm an open dental and, I've got the schedule for the week. Am I like looking at everybody for the week? Am I looking at tomorrow? Am I looking 3 days out? Like what's best practices here typically
yeah,
for getting it done?
next up to maximum 1 week in advance, right?
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That allows me for my confirmations and if there's any expectations that I need to drive, etc. And then frankly, like if there's scheduling that needs to happen and filling in gaps and so forth. Yeah, a week's a great time period. So
And, and if there are practices in open dental, there's one magical thing that Verismart does. It is truly, as soon as I show it to people online, it's like instant sign up. Verismart, to my knowledge, is the only company that takes every single code, the benefit percentage, frequency limitations, age limitations, whatever we have the ability to put in, it actually gets put in the actual individual fields, not a breakdown document that gets just, it's the actual data that gets populated. which
Uh-huh.
makes the treatment plans instantly accurate, right? Uh,
Oh, interesting. So is it like at the procedure level versus just the general patient level, or what does that mean? Is it at the treatment plan level versus just as a general concept?
all of it, right? Because
Yeah.
it's, first is all the plan benefits, right? As well as all the patient stuff like history and everything and how much insurance is remaining, right? And once you have those two things, when you treatment plan, at least in open dental, right, it
Mm.
will auto calculate your patient portion if you've got all the right data there. Um,
Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting. So my conversation with the patient up front can be pretty specific, right?
Very specific and simple enough. Like, in
Yeah.
open dental, there's a patient column saying, here it is. Now, one just as a tip that I give to anybody that's listening, that's doing some of these treatment presentations, etc. I have found that a lot of the folks that are doing these treatment presentations will just say, well, and this is an estimate, and they feel it's good enough. It's not like
Mm.
this, right? And people that train for treatment presentation will also say, make sure you say this is an estimate. And they say it, but it's just not nearly enough because the patient still doesn't fully comprehend it. And in our office, one thing that we have done is to like take it above a few notches, where we're not just showing the patient portion, we're showing the total contracted fees. Like we're in a network office, so we'll say that this is our fee, but you get a discounted fee for being in network. And if you take a look at this number, whatever it is, like 1736, please note for all the things that we're doing today, that's what we need to collect. Now, it's not when you present your insurance card, it's not a credit card. We're unable to just run it. We're just kind of going on good faith and know that your insurance company will do everything possible to mislead us, to do things that will not get covered and blame us, right? This is
Uh,
very standard operating procedure for insurance companies. Please know we're just a dental office that is trying to do this thing. We're in network and we're taking a discounted fee, right? And you just need to be understanding of that and be prepared to pay all the way up to the 1736 amount and not just what you're saying. Now, we will
right.
fight like anything for you,
Right.
but if it comes down to it, please note if you're not prepared to pay all the way up to this thing, I'd rather not you do this treatment than blame us in the future. Fair?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that
Interesting.
is to me the line that needs to be set to patients for them to say, okay, that gives you more stronger confidence.
Mhm.
But anyways, just a sidetrack.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool. Yeah, some scripting there that people might want to think about for treatment coordination as they get something like this in place. All right. So if someone wanted to reach out or, they wanted their office manager or team members to reach out and say, yes, we want to get this off our plate. We think there's higher and better uses for our team than sitting on the phone, getting this done. How do they reach out to you and, get some kind of demo for their office?
The simplest way is to go on our website, which is just verific.biz, which is B-I-Z. Uh, the word verific is just the word terrific with a V, right? And as soon as you go there, you'll basically be presented with watch demo. Click on it, and you will see Monday through Friday many times available for you. Select one, and at this point in time, I'll be the one that'll do the demo for you. Um,
Awesome. They get to
and
talk to the man himself. So that's Verrific dot biz. And then I went to your website, really straightforward. I love the sign behind you, by the way, that our listeners can't see. Friends don't let friends spend hours verifying insurance. That's fabulous. I really appreciate this, Vivek. Is there anything else that you kind of want to close out with as people are thinking about getting this return on investment?
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing that I would say is like, and this is my message to all the offices and all the office managers, et cetera, right? Like, I think it's now 2025 where cars drive themselves, et cetera. It is no longer, I think the insurance companies are not doing what we want them to do.
Yeah.
The vendors are trying really, really hard to solve this problem for you, right? And you hopefully during this thing you got a flavor of how complex and nuanced this problem is. Help us solve this problem. And the best way to do it is, if you think about it, the more users that get on our platform, the better and the more data that we get and the better data we get because it's all crowdsourced. And so right now we have a few hundred offices. and we were able to put together 107,000 plans, unique plans in the system. The moment we get close to 1,000 plans, I think we will have all the data for the plan information that you can need. So join us, and the one thing that you get as part of the software is that you are able to do what's called a plan search. You don't even need a patient. You can type in the employer and it'll give you all the benefits that VeriSmart has. It's so that's my message.
Awesome. No, I really appreciate you solving this. This is why at DEO we call you our innovation partners, because frankly, there's so many different pieces here that have to be solved in dentistry. We don't have the time or the means to solve all of them. So I'm really grateful for you, Vivek, and your capability and your programming skills and everything else to try to solve this, especially as labor costs continue to move up and collections become more critical. And there is a misalignment. There is a conflict of interest between insurance and providers. And so anyone like you that's helping kind of weaponize our side is super appreciative. So thank you so much. If you're interested in learning more about Verrific, go to their website, verific.biz. And until next time, keep smiling.